Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Los Angeles, California, Tuesday, November 7th, 2023, 3:54 p.m. 35-year-old Samuel Bond Haskell IV had lived a pretty charmed life. The suffix "4th" at the end of his name was a good enough indicator of that. His father, Sam Haskell, is an Emmy-winning producer and was an executive at the William Morris Talent Agency before launching his own production company. Samuel had a 6-bedroom home on Coldstream Terrace in the Tarzana neighborhood of Los Angeles. He lived there with his wife, 37-year-old Mei Lee Haskell, along with their 3 young children, and also with Mei Lee's mother, Yang-ji Wang, and her stepfather, Gao-shan Lee. So you had a married couple with kids and the in-laws all under one roof. Talk about a full house. From outward appearances, they seemed to be a completely happy and content couple. The neighbors certainly thought that everything was normal, but apparently there was trouble in paradise, because on November 7th, 2023, Samuel Haskell flagged down some day laborers and asked them to remove some bags from his home. The workers said Samuel had paid them $500 and had told them that they were merely hauling away rocks, but they said the bags felt soggy and soft, like meat. Even though they had taken the bags away, the laborers suspected that something wasn't right, so they pulled over on the side of the road to examine the bags and discovered human body parts. The laborers turned right around and returned the money and the bags to Haskell and then contacted police, but by the time the local pig patrol arrived, the bags and Haskell were gone. The next morning, a man found a human torso stuffed into a duffel bag in a dumpster in an Encino parking lot, about 5 miles from Haskell's home. It would later be revealed that on that same day, Samuel Haskell was both seen and videoed putting a large trash bag into that same dumpster. Police returned to Haskell's house, with detectives discovering blood and other evidence consistent with killing and dismemberment. Haskell was arrested after the gruesome discovery. They found him at a shopping mall, no less. He was charged with 3 counts of murder. The medical examiner would determine that the torso that had been found was Mei Lee Haskell's. No remains of either of her parents would ever be found. But as the deputy DA said, they didn't need a body in order to charge someone with murder. Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman said DNA evidence linked to all 3 victims was on a bloody knife found in Haskell's possession. Hochman also said investigators found a cutting saw, machetes, knives, a .357 caliber firearm, and a bloody plyboard in which the killings had occurred. And just when people thought this bizarre tragedy couldn't get any weirder, it did. When Haskell made his first court appearance, he was shirtless and wearing an anti-suicide smock. According to a statement from Haskell's attorney, Joseph Wymortz, Haskell was, quote, paraded in front of you over our objection, half naked in court, and allowed zero dignity. Mr. Haskell was forced to wear a protective vest, which he could not pull up above his chest for medical reasons. In 2013, he had a colectomy and was required to rely on an ostomy bag. Now, all of this happened back in 2023. There wasn't much movement on the case in terms of prosecution in the last 2 years, though there was one significant development. Haskell was awaiting trial when he reportedly committed suicide in his cell on Saturday, July the 12th of this year. Authorities described him as having self-inflicted injuries. I don't know why, but that kind of reminds me of Epstein for some reason. It's still unknown what the motive was for this slaughter. D.A. Hochman said that Haskell had been having an affair with a 27-year-old woman, but it's not known if this had anything to do with it, and now I guess we'll never know. According to Mei Lee's uncle, Mei worked several jobs and was the main breadwinner in the household. It's not clear what work, if any, Samuel Haskell did or whether his family supported him financially. The son of a rich and powerful white media executive becomes spoiled and shiftless due to his privilege? Say it ain't so! How can people who have everything be the angriest and the most willing to commit heinous killings like these? This is the evil heart of white supremacy and the degeneracy that it spawns. And just to show that there is sympathy for the devil, when the LA Times covered the story of Haskell's death, they made sure to humanize him by making the first 6 paragraphs of their story not about the horrifying crime that he had committed, but instead making it all about how his death was part of a larger pattern of inmates dying while in the custody of the LA County jail system. That's what their focus was for the first 6 paragraphs of that story. Now, I don't mean to say that inmates dying is unimportant, But the white media showed a lot more concern and sympathy and outrage at the prison guards over Haskell's death than they did for Robert Brooks, who didn't commit a triple homicide and who was savagely murdered by animals in New York. No matter what happens, the way the white media covers stories is determined solely by the race of whomever they're talking about. Even triple axe murders become human interest stories so long as the human you're talking about isn't black. They report on a triple murder with humanity and sympathy while demonizing black people who are the victims. And this is the result of it. But this is typical of the white media because, hey, just because a guy butchers his wife, the mother of his children, and then decides to ginsu her parents as well, that's no reason to make that the main thing we talk about when he dies. Instead, let's bemoan the way that he was treated by those mean old people in the LA prison system. And the white media's bizarre outrage for Haskell in this instance is also part of the reason why I made it this morning's briefing. As I said at the beginning, this barbaric act took place in 2023. That's significant because we heard a lot about Stop Asian Hate in the years following the outbreak of COVID-19, but mostly what we saw was the white media lying and falsely trying to make black people the face of any and all violence, altercations, or merely arguments with anyone Asian. They were on a full-fledged jihad to make sure that that was emblazoned in the public mind. You had creeps like Juju Chang putting out absurd anti-black propaganda hit pieces, and nobody called her out on it because this was the narrative the white media wanted out there. And so it got repeated by both pundits and politicians alike, with these pundits and politicians naturally having the same background as the Samuel Haskells of the world. Because while they were sitting there false flagging black people as being the main threat to Asians, meanwhile, you had white guys committing mass shootings of Asians, and this guy who kills his wife and both his in-laws, and for some reason, this story was buried. Gee, can't imagine why. And of course, there's no threat that this false paradigm was ever going to be overturned, mainly because there were a lot of people who would be the victims of these crimes who didn't speak out against this phony narrative. And that's the reason why there were certain individuals who felt that they had carte blanche to go after Asians, because nobody in the media was calling them out, and the victims and their families were not pointing them out. This creates a safe space for these kind of individuals, a free fire zone for what are blatant hate crimes, or at the very least, undeniably anti-Asian violence. You simply cannot make a comparison between a couple of black customers in an Asian salon having an argument with the proprietors with a guy who decides that he's going to kill his wife and both of his in-laws just because. But that's exactly what the white media did. And they weren't alone. And that's the reason why these kind of things happen and continue to happen. This story should have gotten wall-to-wall-to-wall coverage when it first happened. But instead, it was buried. Because if there's too many stories about people who aren't black in the news, well, that's not the kind of thing that they want the public seeing. Otherwise, suspicion might become habit-forming. This tragic incident just goes to prove that America's obsession with scapegoating black people is not some victimless crime. It creates the very conditions like this that allows the Samuel Haskells of the world to believe that they can actually butcher 3 people and then go ahead and just tell some strangers or passerby, hey, can you go ahead and take care of these dead bodies for me, and think to himself that nothing's going to happen to him. What kind of society allows a person to think that they've got that kind of privilege? A white supremacist society. That's what. You had some people who told the cops, hey, this guy just got through handing off some garbage bags to us, and we believe that there's dead body parts inside of this thing, and instead of there being a citywide immediate APB on them, instead it's a matter of, well, we're going to go ahead and get some lunch, and we don't see him here right now, we'll come back tomorrow or something. Though even with Haskell's death, you still have to put an asterisk beside any claim of case closed. And the reason, of course, is because Maylee's parents' remains still haven't been found. Though the white media didn't put much emphasis on that, even for the few outlets that actually covered this story. And now that the perpetrator himself is dead, they have even less incentive, not that they cared much to begin with. Just goes to show you can also add the white media's non-existent morals and ethics to the list of things that are never going to be seen or heard from again. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Lamont Ingram, Rebellious Zoe, Deep Eye 904, Atu Hammond, and Leonard Cottingham. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.